Hey there, welcome. It's Mr. Aranda, and today, as you can see on your screen, we're going to spend the first half of this video on the exceptions to freedom of speech, as well as covering hate speech. In the second half, we're going to focus on the rubric for the letter. So right here is the text to freedom of speech, to the First Amendment more specifically. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievance. Now, what does this mean? Basically it means this. You have the right to freedom of speech, expression, religion, and protest. Obviously the First Amendment covers more, but we're not going to get into that today. Instead, what you should realize is that there are exceptions to freedom of speech. You cannot say whatever you want in this country. Here are some examples. Obscenity, finding something is very distasteful. Basically, if something is overtly sexual and offensive and lacks artistic value, it could be considered as obscene. Now, the artistic value is important because some people tried to argue that those ancient Greek statues where people were naked was obscene, overly sexual. But they have artistic value, and so they couldn't censor those statues. Second, a compelling government interest. If the government has a reason to censor you, they can censor you. Now, this is a very narrow, very narrow exception to freedom of speech, because the government will typically only censor you in extreme cases if you know something or will say something that's a threat to national security. They don't care if you say, I like pineapple on pizza. They're not going to care about that. Only if you put the country at risk or something on a similar level will they try to censor you. And sedition. If you try to advocate for overthrowing the United States government, that is not covered under freedom of speech, and you will get censored, or you could be censored. Next, defamation. Saying something that tries to ruin someone's character, reputation, or ability to earn money. Libel and slander are the subcategories under defamation. And so this is something that's hard to prove, because first you need to prove that it was done with malicious intent. And this is very difficult for celebrities who are oftentimes in the public eye. So there's always gossip running around, so you don't always know what's true and what's fake. And so if a newspaper publishes something that's fake or untrue, they could always default to the point that, well, I heard it was true, and they weren't trying to hurt the celebrity's reputation or ability to earn a living. And you also need to prove that your ability to earn money was affected, or at least that could be one of the three things. And if your ability to earn money was not affected, well, you might not be able to sue for defamation. Same thing if you can't prove your reputation or your character was hurt, then you don't have a case. And again, libel is written. It's just defamation when written, so if it's published in a magazine. Slander is when spoken. So if they defamate your character when they speak. Next one. These ones are the exceptions most related to your prompt, okay? First one is fighting words. Words that will cause people to fight one another or harm somebody. So if you insult somebody and you provoke them, that is not covered under the First Amendment, because those are fighting words. Second is causing panic. Things that will cause unrest. If you shell bomb on a plane, that will cause unrest and could possibly harm everybody on the plane. Also, if you shout fire in a movie theater, the classic example, because people will panic and that might result in people getting injured. And the third one is incitement to crime. If you ask somebody to commit a crime, or you basically encourage them to do so, saying, hey, that watch would look pretty nice on you. How about you go over there and take it without paying? Just walk out the door and know what I mean? Or if you flat out ask them to, hey, help me jump this guy. Let's do it. You can't ask somebody or guide somebody towards committing a crime. That is not covered under freedom of speech. Something you may have noticed. There is no exception to hate speech. So currently, hate speech is oftentimes covered by the First Amendment. Now, the main reason is the government does not trust itself to prove what is hateful. So they think that it's a slippery slope. If they declare that something is hateful, then they're going to start declaring more and more things hateful. And then you won't be able to say anything, or the government will have the right to censor you a lot more in this country, and they don't want that. They also worry that maybe this could be used by somebody in power, that perhaps, let's say if we start saying things are hate speech, somebody like Trump could expand that meaning to anybody who criticizes him, right? And that way you couldn't criticize him, because that would be, let's say, I don't know, it would be compelling government interest, right? It's dangerous to the country if you insult the president. And so that's why oftentimes hate speech is covered under the First Amendment. Now, this doesn't mean, though, we can't have laws regarding hate speech. So, for example, if you attack somebody because of their race, then you could get additional penalties. So, this is to encourage people to not be racist, to not be prejudiced. So we can make hate crime laws that add additional punishment to what somebody is saying or doing, but we cannot censor the speech itself unless it does one of these things here. Now, if it involves fighting words, if you call somebody a racial slur to their face, that has been ruled and considered fighting words. If it causes panic, if you and a group of people are having a rally about how you're going to get rid of a certain race or religion, that could cause panic, and that is not covered. Incitement to crime. If you advocate for the genocide of a certain race, certain religion, that is not protected under freedom of speech as well. And so, this is something I feel I should cover regardless. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequence, okay? You could be fired or punished for hate speech because private companies or institutions have their own standards. If you say a racial slur and then a company decides they don't want you because they don't want that type of speech in their space, they have every right to fire you. Now, why is this? Freedom of speech allows the government to not punish you for what you say. It doesn't protect you from your employer choosing to fire you because you choose to make hateful speech. Also, it doesn't mean that people have to allow you to say what they want, say what you want. If you keep saying, let's say, a racial slur, and the people around you are trying to censor you or say, stop, get out of here, that is well within their right. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequence. If you keep going off about a certain religion in a store, the manager has every right to kick you out for that. They can ban you from forums, etc., etc. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequence. Okay? And next, we're going to transition to writing a letter to your representative or senator. So should the United States start to censor or restrict hate sites in your opinion? So you can argue that we should censor or restrict hate sites completely, or you can advocate for restricting certain aspects of a website. You could also say, no, don't censor at all. And so you're going to be graded according to this rubric. Let's start with the first row here. Introduce precise, knowledgeable claims. Now, to get a 4, you need to clearly address the prompt in a nuanced way. To get a 3, you need to address it in a specific way. 2, very general. 1, in a vague way. So what does that look like? So a 1, the United States should censor or restrict the hate sites. This is a 1 primarily because it addresses the prompt, but it's vague. Censor or restrict, okay, that's pretty broad. The hate sites, not specific yet again, very vague. Now, let's show you what a 4 looks like. The claim clearly addresses the prompt in a nuanced way. The United States should only censor the hate sites that go against freedom of speech, such as in the case of fighting words, incitement of crime, or causing panic. The focus should be on these ones because they are much easier to prove. So this is a 4 because it's addressing the prompt. And it's complicated. And I'll say this. What makes this a 4 and not a 3 is this last sentence. Remember, a 3 is a specific way, and this first sentence is very specific. They should censor hate sites in the case of fighting words, incitement to crime, or causing panic. What makes it a 4, makes it nuanced, is the fact that you're saying that they should focus on these ones because they're much easier to prove. So you're saying they shouldn't waste their time focusing on the ones that are difficult to prove, which adds a bit of complexity to your claim. The next one, establish the significance of claims. 4 and 3, notice the word evidence. You show the importance or significance of your claim with strong or weak evidence. A 2 or a 1 just shows the significance of claims or fails to show the significance of claim. There is no evidence. If you fail to show the significance of a claim, it's a 1. If you show the significance of the claim, it's 2. If you bring evidence, you start to go into 3-4 territory. I went through multiple of these. The United States really needs to address the serious issue because it is hateful. Okay. So you don't really expand upon a claim here. You just say hateful. It could go into more detail. That's a 1. A 2. The United States should censor these websites because all too often these websites radicalize people and cause them to harm others. This is a 2 because you're showing the significance of the claim. We should censor these sites because they're causing people to harm one another. Now, why is this not a 3? This is not a 3 because there is no evidence. When you say websites radicalize people and cause them to harm others, that is a generalization. That's not evidence. Evidence is more specific. If you had said a case, then it would move to a 3-4 territory. Next, right here, as you can see, this is a 4. And notice I underlined this portion. This is because oftentimes the only difference between a 2 and a 3 or a 4 is just a sentence or 2, really. And so I even started off the same. The United States should censor these websites because all too often these websites radicalize people and cause them to harm others. It's a 2. But right here, this example or evidence makes it into 3-4 territory. An example of this would be Omar Mateen, the shooter who killed 49 homosexual people and had been radicalized via the internet. This is important because the uncensored internet resulted in 49 people being killed. If the government had censored these sites earlier, these people would not have died. That is extremely strong evidence there, because you are citing one of the most heinous acts of a mass shooting and radicalization in recent American history. So that's extremely strong. Now, what would be a 3? Perhaps if you just made, if you cited something where people just started using more hateful slurs because of the internet, that might be a 3. It's evidence, but it's not to the extent of this 4, where people are dying because of radicalization on the internet. So a 3 and a 4 just depends on what evidence you choose to use to support your claim. This one, distinguish claims from counterclaims. A 4, you address and refute a counterclaim. A 3 is you address a counterclaim. A 2 is you mention a counterclaim but do not address it. And 1 is you fail to recognize a counterclaim. So the whole reason I have you address counterclaims is because you should always think about what the other side thinks. You do not have an educated enough opinion if you do not consider what the other sides think. You do not have to accept what they think, but you need to at least look at it from their perspective so that way you become more knowledgeable about the issue. And so let's see what each of these looks like. A 1, very simple. You don't address anything, right? Fails to recognize a counterclaim, it's a 1. A 2, though this could save lives, some may say that freedom of speech is an important part of our society. If you leave it at that, It's just a 2. You mention the counterclaim, but you do not address it. Okay. A 4. Though this could save lives, some may say that freedom of speech is an important part of our society. However, freedom of speech in this country does not cover harm done to others, and so these websites should be censored as they are not abiding by the law. So this is a 4 because you're addressing and refuting the counterclaim. You are saying that they are wrong, and that's what makes it a 4. Now, what would a 3 look like in this case? A 3, according to this rubric, is you address the counterclaim. A 3 would be something like, though this could save lives, some may say that freedom of speech is an important part of society, and this is valid. Freedom of speech is an important part of our society, where you acknowledge the counterclaim, but you don't really refute it, right? You just take the elephant in the room and bring it in and address it. Refuting it is proving them wrong. That's a 4. Next, these last 2, organization, grammar, writing. I'm not going to spend much time on these because basically if you make sure your paper flows and there aren't any real grammar errors, you can get a 4. Now, part of what helps would get you a 4 for grammar or writing is if I could just read through it without getting any sudden stops. And writing is ordered clearly, logical to support arguments. I have a little bit of a support here. Let me just get rid of that thing here. If I were to suggest a bare minimum, I would suggest 3 paragraphs and order it this way. The first paragraph is an introduction where you thank them for their time and introduce the topic, because politicians are busy and you should make sure to be courteous, but you've also got to tell them what you're talking about. Second is where you make the argument about your stance. This is going to be the bulk of your grade right here, using the evidence, having the claim, and all of that stuff. And 3, you just summarize, conclude, and again thank them for their time, because again they're very busy people and being courteous can get you quite far in this life. So this could be a structure you could use to follow to make sure that your letter is as good as possible. And thank you if you watch this video all the way through. I miss being in front of the classroom, and that's life sometimes. I don't know if there's going to be another video this week, as I believe that this assignment is going to take you quite a long time to do, especially if you take this seriously. This assignment is due Friday at 11:59 p.m. Things you should keep in mind. If I do another video this week, it'll likely be an update video regarding e-learning and where we go from here. In addition to this, I mean, I'm just going to be very straightforward. I don't really know if we're going to come back for this school year. So do keep that in mind. This e-learning thing, we're definitely going to have to make this adjustment together. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. You can comment below in the YouTube video, or you can comment in Google Classroom. I wish you guys the best of luck. Have a great day, and of course, make good choices, make good choices. Thanks, guys.